Imagine walking through a forest where the trees are as tall as skyscrapers and the ground beneath your feet thumps with the rhythmic vibration of a heart the size of a small car. The air is thick, the sounds are primal, and you are standing in the shadow of a creature so massive that its head disappears into the canopy above. This isn't a scene from a movie. This was reality on our planet for over 160 million years. Dinosaurs are the ultimate legends of Earth's history. But they weren't just the giant monsters we see on cinema screens. They were a diverse, complex, and incredibly successful group of animals that occupied every corner of the globe, from the icy plains of Antarctica to the lush swamps of North America. Today, we are going on a journey through time to explain all the major species of dinosaurs in detail. We are going to look at the massive long necks, the terrifying hunters, the heavily armored tanks, and the small, feathered ancestors of the birds you see in your garden today. If you have ever wondered how these animals lived, how they socialized, and what really made them the masters of the earth, you are in the right place. Let's dive straight into the Mesozoic era. To understand dinosaurs, we first have to clear up what a dinosaur actually is. They weren't just any big reptile. They were a specific group of archosaurs with a unique hip structure that allowed them to stand upright with their legs tucked directly beneath their bodies, rather than sprawling out to the sides like a crocodile or a lizard. This single evolutionary tweak changed everything, allowing them to grow to sizes and reach speeds that other reptiles could only dream of. The dinosaur family tree is split into two main branches based on their hip structure: the Saurischia, or lizard-hipped dinosaurs, and the Ornithischia, or bird-hipped dinosaurs. Interestingly, birds actually evolved from the lizard-hipped branch, which is one of those quirks of evolution that keeps paleontologists busy. Let's start with the most famous group of all, the theropods. These are the two-legged, mostly carnivorous dinosaurs that fuel our nightmares and our curiosity. At the top of this list, of course, is Tyrannosaurus rex. Living at the very end of the Cretaceous period, T-Rex was the pinnacle of theropod evolution. It wasn't just about size. It was about engineering. Its skull was built to withstand the pressure of a bite force that could crush a refrigerator. But T-Rex wasn't alone. In the deserts of North Africa, millions of years before T-Rex, lived Spinosaurus. This was a truly bizarre giant, larger even than the Rex, with a massive sail on its back and a crocodile-like snout. Recent discoveries suggest Spinosaurus was one of the few semi-aquatic dinosaurs, spending its time in the rivers hunting massive fish. It represents a completely different approach to being a top predator. Then we have the Allosaurids. During the Jurassic period, Allosaurus was the lion of the plains. It was sleeker and faster than T-Rex, with long, three-fingered claws that it used to grapple with prey. While T-Rex used brute force, Allosaurus might have used its upper jaw like a hatchet, striking down at its prey to cause massive impact. And we can't forget the Dromaeosaurids, better known as the raptors. These weren't the scaly monsters from the movies. They were covered in feathers, looking more like a terrifying hawk on steroids than a lizard. Velociraptor was actually only about the size of a turkey, but it was incredibly agile and possessed a sickle-shaped toe claw that was a masterpiece of biological precision. Its larger cousin, Utahraptor, was the real heavy hitter of the family, reaching sizes that would make any modern predator look small. Now, let's shift gears and look at the giants that literally shook the earth, the sauropods. These are the long-necked herbivores that represent the largest land animals to ever exist. Imagine Brachiosaurus, a creature so tall it could look into a 4-story window. Its front legs were longer than its back legs, giving it a giraffe-like posture that allowed it to reach the highest leaves. Then there's Diplodocus, famous for its incredibly long, whip-like tail. These animals weren't just big, they were biological miracles. They had air sacs throughout their bodies and hollow bones to keep them light enough to move, and their necks were supported by a complex system of ligaments that worked like the cables on a suspension bridge. Among the sauropods, the titanosaurs were the final and greatest of the line. Argentinosaurus is often cited as the heaviest of them all, with estimates suggesting it weighed as much as 20 elephants. Just think about the amount of vegetation an animal like that had to eat every single day just to survive. They were the ultimate lawnmowers of the Mesozoic. They lived in herds for protection, and even a top-tier predator would think twice before approaching a group of healthy adults. One stomp from a leg the size of a tree trunk would be the end of the conversation. Next, we move to the Ornithischians, specifically the armored tanks known as Theriophorans. The two heavyweights here are Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus. Stegosaurus, with its iconic plates and tail spikes known as a thagomizer, is a fan favorite. For a long time, people thought the plates were for protection, but now we think they might have been used for temperature regulation or even for display, changing color as blood pumped through them to intimidate rivals or attract mates. Ankylosaurus, on the other hand, was built like a moving fortress. Its entire back was covered in bony plates called osteoderms, and it even had armored eyelids. At the end of its tail was a massive club of solid bone. One swing of that club could easily shatter the leg of a charging predator. It was the ultimate defensive strategist. In the same bird-hipped group, we find the ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs. Triceratops is the undisputed king here. With its 3 horns and massive bony frill, it was built for head-to-head combat. But ceratopsians weren't just about defense. Their frills were likely used for communication and social signaling within the herd. There were many species in this family, like Styracosaurus with its multiple spikes, or the bizarre Pachyrhinoceros, which had a massive bony boss on its nose instead of a horn. These animals moved in massive herds, much like modern buffalo, and they evolved specialized beaks and teeth to grind through the toughest plants of their time. Then we have the hadrosaurs, or the duck-billed dinosaurs. These were the most common large herbivores of the late Cretaceous. Edmontosaurus and Parasaurolophus are the stars of this group. Parasaurolophus is famous for the long, curved crest on the back of its head. This crest was hollow and connected to its nasal passages. Scientists have used computer models to recreate the sound this crest would have made, and it turns out they could produce low-frequency, trumpet-like sounds that could travel for miles through the forest. They were the masters of communication. Hadrosaurs were also incredible parents. We have found nesting sites for a species called Maiasaura, which means good mother lizard, proving that they cared for their young and lived in complex social structures. Let's not overlook the pachycephalosaurs, the bone-headed dinosaurs. These animals had skulls that were up to 10 inches thick with solid bone. For a long time, it was assumed they used these as battering rams to headbutt each other like mountain goats. While some scientists still debate this, it's clear that their heads were used for some kind of social display or combat. They were relatively small, bipedal herbivores, but they had a unique look that sets them apart from anything alive today. As we move through these species, it is vital to talk about the discovery of feathers. We used to think dinosaurs were just scaly and green or brown, but in recent decades, spectacular fossils from China have shown us that many, if not most, theropods were covered in feathers. This includes early ancestors of T-Rex like Yutyrannus. Feathers likely started as a way to stay warm, especially for smaller dinosaurs, and only later evolved into the tools for flight we see in Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx is one of the most important fossils ever found because it shows the perfect transition between a dinosaur and a bird, having teeth and a long bony tail like a dinosaur, but feathers and wings like a bird. Speaking of flight, we have to clarify a common mistake. Pterosaurs, like Pteranodon and the massive Quetzalcoatlus, are often called flying dinosaurs, but they were actually a separate group of flying reptiles that lived alongside them. Quetzalcoatlus was the size of a small airplane, with a wingspan of 35 feet. Similarly, the great sea monsters like Mosasaurus and Plesiosaurus were marine reptiles, not dinosaurs. However, they shared the same world and the same sudden ending. The diversity of dinosaurs was also driven by the changing geography of the Earth. During the Triassic, all the continents were joined together in one giant landmass called Pangaea. This meant that the early dinosaurs, like the small, fast Coelophysis, could spread across the globe relatively easily. But as the Jurassic and Cretaceous progressed, the continents drifted apart, isolating populations. This led to a burst of evolution, with different species developing in South America, Africa, and Asia. In South America, for example, we see the Giganotosaurus, a theropod even larger than T-Rex but with a very different skull structure. In Asia, we find Therizinosaurus, a herbivorous theropod with 3-foot-long claws on its hands. It looked like a giant, grumpy bird with Freddy Krueger claws, used likely for pulling down branches rather than hunting. The biology of dinosaurs was also far more advanced than the old reptilian labels suggest. We now have strong evidence that many dinosaurs were warm-blooded, or at least somewhere in between warm and cold-blooded. This high metabolic rate allowed them to grow incredibly fast and stay active throughout the year. They weren't just waiting for the sun to warm them up. They were active, social, and dynamic animals. Some even lived in the Arctic and Antarctic circles, surviving months of darkness and cold, which would be impossible for a typical modern lizard. We also see evidence of complex behaviors. Tracks found in the mud of ancient rivers show us that dinosaurs moved in organized groups. Small ones stayed in the middle for protection while larger adults walked on the outside. We have found fossils of dinosaurs huddled together in sleep or even locked in combat. The famous fighting dinosaurs fossil shows a velociraptor and a protoceratops that were buried by a collapsing sand dune in the middle of a life-and-death struggle. It captures a split second of drama from 75 million years ago. The ecology of the dinosaur world was a delicate balance. The giant sauropods acted as ecosystem engineers, clearing forests and spreading seeds through their waste. The predators kept the populations of herbivores in check, and the smaller dinosaurs lived in the shadows, occupying niches that often went unnoticed. It was a world of constant competition and adaptation. When the flowering plants first appeared in the Cretaceous, dinosaurs had to adapt again. The ceratopsians and hadrosaurs evolved grinding teeth to deal with these new, tougher food sources, showcasing their incredible ability to change with the environment. But why aren't they here anymore? The story usually ends with a giant rock falling from the sky 66 million years ago. The Chicxulub impact was a world-changing event, causing tsunamis, wildfires, and a nuclear winter that lasted for years. For the large dinosaurs that needed massive amounts of food every day, the sudden collapse of the food chain was impossible to survive. However, the legacy of the dinosaurs didn't completely disappear. The small, feathered theropods that were light enough to survive on insects and seeds managed to pull through. Those survivors are what we now call birds. Every time you see a hawk soaring or a robin in your garden, you are looking at the direct descendants of the giants that once ruled the world. In a very real sense, the age of dinosaurs never truly ended. So, when we look at the incredible variety of species we have discussed today, from the armored Ankylosaurus to the majestic Brachiosaurus and the intelligent Troodon, we are looking at one of the most successful chapters in the history of life on Earth. They weren't evolutionary failures. They were the masters of their domain for a period of time that makes human history look like a blink of an eye. They adapted to shifting continents, changing climates, and new food sources. They were parents, hunters, socialites, and travelers. Understanding dinosaurs is about more than just looking at old bones. It's about piecing together a lost world. It's about using chemistry, physics, and biology to breathe life back into creatures that had been forgotten for millions of years. Every new fossil found in a desert or a mine is another page in the story. We are learning about their colors, their sounds, their growth rates, and even their diseases. We have found fossilized skin, feathers, and even internal organs in rare cases, bringing us closer to these animals than ever before. The world they inhabited was different from ours, yet familiar. They saw the same sun, walked under the same moon, and felt the same rain. They experienced the thrill of the hunt, the comfort of the herd, and the drive to protect their young. They were a spectacular display of what life is capable of when given enough time and space to evolve. Whether they were the size of a pigeon or the size of a building, each species played a role in the grand tapestry of the Mesozoic. As we conclude this deep dive into the species of dinosaurs, remember that the ground you walk on once belonged to them. Their history is our history, part of the long, winding path that led to the world we live in today. Dinosaurs remind us of the fragility and the resilience of life. They remind us that the Earth is a place of constant change, and that even the most powerful creatures can be humbled by the forces of nature. But most importantly, they spark our imagination. They remind us of a time when dragons were real and the world was a wild, untamed frontier. Thank you for exploring this ancient world with me. From the small footprints of the earliest hunters to the massive skeletons of the last giants, the story of the dinosaurs is one of the most awesome tales ever told. It is a story of beauty, power, and survival. As we continue to dig and discover, who knows what other secrets are waiting to be uncovered in the rocks beneath our feet. The age of the dinosaurs might be millions of years in the past, but in our minds and through our science, they will live on forever. Stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop wondering about the incredible creatures that once called this planet home. The story of life is long, and the dinosaurs are its most spectacular chapter.